Welcome to Pure Conversation. Thanks for joining us for today's podcast. Pure Conversation is co-hosted by me, Joseph Miller.
And me, Darren May. Check out our website, pureconversation.com, for more content and behind-the-scenes looks. Make sure to subscribe. Rate us wherever you listen to podcasts 5 stars, or don't rate us at all. Really appreciate the listen.
Disclaimer, Pure Conversation is an opinion-based podcast. We're not financial consultants, and any financial advice should be purely for entertainment purposes.
This computer. Okay, we're going. Excellent. Hi, everyone. Good morning. We have the distinct pleasure of having Matt Erickson on today. Matt is the marketing director for National Positions, a digital marketing agency in Westlake Village, California. He completed his undergrad studies in international business and marketing and holds an MBA from CSU Sacramento. His main areas of interest include social media, branding, and marketing psychology. Matt, it's incredible to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate you taking the time.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you about is, so you basically run all the marketing for National Positions, internal marketing. And for people who don't know, that's, the ad agency that I work for. And it seems like it should be a lot of pressure.
Very shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Seems like it should be a lot of pressure doing marketing for a marketing agency. So I was just wondering if maybe that would be a good place to start.
Sorry, I think I have a lag on my end. Can you repeat that there?
Sure. I was just saying there's like an extra pressure for marketing for a marketing agency. Like the whole company is being judged upon, their marketing. So it seemed like it's much more intense than like a regular just company that needs marketing. So maybe you could just speak to how you like to tackle that piece of the puzzle for National Positions.
Yeah, it's definitely sometimes I feel like an old school pinball machine. Just it's always bouncing from one thing to another thing. And what's the new strategy? What's the new tactic? What's the new way to do things? And I will say that coming from, prior, when it was like you have a specific product or a specific service, you can kind of just focus on one or two things because you're just trying to talk about that specific product or service. When you're doing marketing for a marketing agency, I do feel like I have a stress level that's a little bit higher because not only are you working a lot of B2B, which is already a little more difficult, at least I believe it's more difficult, B2B marketing than B2C marketing, but you're not being versed in maybe the features of a product. You're trying to be versed in all the different aspects of marketing. So like, for example, we have a PPC team, so they can really know anything and everything about PPC, and they don't really have to know.
Do you mind explaining just for our listeners?
Sure.
Not everyone might know what B2B or PPC is, so just every first time you use an acronym, just let everybody know.
Oh yeah, sure. So B2B, business to business marketing, usually that's going to be like a service based. So if someone needed, let's say, internet security for their company, they're going to work with another business to supply that. So we're doing marketing, and usually we're going to work with a clothing company or a security company. So we have business services, they're going to go on their business services. So B2B marketing, business to business marketing. The PPC department, or pay-per-click department, that's kind of our shorthand for saying marketing is constantly changing the way they say things, but digital marketing, digital advertising, Google advertising, Facebook advertising, we kind of put that all under paid media. Many years ago, it was SEM, search engine marketing. That was the short version. So if you have a department like that, they don't really have to get their teeth or their hands into the design, marketing design or search engine optimization or even marketing automation. They can kind of stick in their area. I have to be constantly up on, okay, what's going on in SEO, search engine optimization, what's going on in Google advertising, what's going on with different platforms for marketing automation. And that's just the functionality of all these different services. But then internally, I'm constantly trying to find, different ways that we can improve our own performance. What's a new way we can create a design? What's a new way we can shoot out an email? What's a new, so it's definitely I feel exhausted by the end of the week, just because it's not just executing, but it's also trying to think strategically, which you're trying to be ahead of the game, and if you don't stop and take a breath and just focus on one specific area at a time. For example, like we're working with Darren on our marketing automation and nailing down our weekly, nurturing emails that are going out. Sometimes you can't be up on what's going on SEO because you're trying to lock in one strategy at a time. I know this conversation is going everywhere right now because this is what happens in my mind every single day. So I would say there is a bit of pressure because I am also pretty hard on myself. I want to know what the results are on something. I want to know, was the campaign launched at the right time? What kind of results is it getting? And I think that comes because I didn't start in marketing originally. So I think my career has kind of led me to this point. So I'm always thinking about the bigger picture. And sometimes it gets me into trouble because I don't know when to stop. But yeah, that's a very long-winded answer to your very short question. But maybe that gives you a little bit of context there.
You're mentioning, you mentioned that there are all these different types of ways to advertise. You also mentioned that there are different types of people who could advertise, like a business, like an individual client. So are there any individual strategies that make sense as a rule for different types of customers, or is it a case by case? You have to look at the individual business, you have to look at the individual person.
That is the crux of all marketing, and I'm going to do two things here. One is we always say it all depends, at which I
very helpful answer.
Very helpful answer, because you get that when it's what's the best way to do this? Well, it all depends. But let me take a step back here really quick, because I consider something like emails, that's not a strategy. That's a tool. That's a tactic. Now because most people think of, how do I send an email to get a sale? That's a tactic. That's a tool. Now, if you go, how do I use email in general to attract clients, to nurture clients, to convert? Now you're getting into a strategy. So that's kind of one of the big differences. So let me kind of bring it back down to, you had mentioned an individual client. I'm not going to pick a certain industry, but let's just say a small business. As far as what's going to work for them, it really depends on how much time. Let's say they're doing it on their own, they don't have an agency. How much time do you have? How much time do you have to dedicate? Because it's, I think a lot of people and a lot of small companies, they want to find, okay, what's the tool that I can buy and it'll just do the work for me? Well, it's only as good. It's like saying, if I buy a car, I'm just going to end up at work. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you have to put some effort into it to make the machine run. So if you're going to be doing, say you decide I want to try to do email marketing. Okay. Do you have time to write the emails? Do you have time to design the emails? Do you have the time to respond to people who are responding to you? Do you have all of these things you have to think about, which are really going to depend on the type of business. If you have a small business who's a retail store, well, maybe that's not going to be the best thing for them. Just a little mom and pop retail shop. Maybe just sending emails isn't the best thing for them, because depending on what you're selling, people need to see that. So maybe better is to do Facebook advertising in just your little local, area there, which again is a tool, but there could be a strategy behind it. So you need to make sure you have photos. You need to make sure you can take some video, that you can write some ad copy, that you know how to target. And these are the things that make people's eyes just glaze over, because all of a sudden it went from simple, I just advertise on Facebook, to, wait, I have to know how to target, and I have to know I don't know how to do all that. So as far as what's going to work for each, there is a positive side of this. Whatever's going to work for each individual client, what I would say, start where you spend your time. So in other words, if you're a small business owner and you spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and Facebook just on your own, well, then you probably know how those ecosystems work. So I would start there. And if you're talking to other people in your industry or clients on those platforms, well, you know that they're there. So then and it's going to be a lot easier for you to get into, marketing or engaging in those areas because you're already familiar with it and you like it. It's much easier to stay involved and, for all intents and purposes, try to push your product in places that you're already familiar with and you enjoy being. So I don't know if that answers your question. So it really depends on where you have the time and energy to spend and where you already spend your time. Because you can always add more tactics and strategies, but I would, start with what you're best at.
Maybe like the place to go from here, because I think you've mentioned a lot of really, really important things and talked about content and different advertising avenues. Maybe let's like go down the list of digital marketing
Darren, just
tools
repeat that. You got cut off.
Sorry, can you hear me? Oh.
Yeah, now I can. Now you're good.
You just
Sorry about that. Is this better?
All right, we're good.
Okay, I'll edit that out. But I think maybe the place to start is just to go down the different digital avenues and talk about like sort of what do you think about them? Where do you think those are going? And who do they make sense for? So like I think the first thing you talked about was SEO, search engine optimization. So maybe we could just like briefly give a definition for people who don't know.
Sure.
People who don't know is a nice way of saying me.
No, that's all good. And actually this is good because as you can tell, I tend to go kind of deep sometimes. So SEO, the simple version, search engine optimization, that's anytime like we're doing today, you have your device, most of it is on here these days, and you go, I need to find a gas station. I need to find where to get lunch. I need to find whatever. And you type in, where can I get food near me? Well, the results that show up, we call those organic results. And that's search engine optimization. It's how you're discovered online. And as far as what goes into it, that's a whole can of worms, so I'm not going to go there right yet. But it's really anytime you're searching on
Please
Google,
feel free to share as many trade secrets as possible also.
Well, they won't be, they're not secrets, there's just nowhere to find them, but I'll happily throw them out there. But let me throw out some examples. How search has changed. Let's just go over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, it was what we typed based on keywords. And if you typed, I want to make lasagna, it would take keywords like lasagna and give you all the results for that. So it's pretty basic. And I think everyone can understand that. Well, especially over the last 3 to 5 years, well, now we have these voice activated little deals that we use. Alexa, how do I get this? Well, that's another kind of search. Now it's a voice search. We can go on Amazon and maybe we see a product in a store. I see these glasses and I don't know who they make. Well, I can just take a picture in Amazon and it'll search everywhere to find any kind of glasses that look like that. Now you have an image search, you have a visual search. And now also, let's say I spoke a search and said something like, where can I find a bike trail in Los Angeles? Because I live in Los Angeles. Well, 10 years ago, it would just pick up words like bike and show you a bunch of ads for bikes. Well, now, as of last year, Google released an update called the BERT update. I can't remember what it stands for. It's like biodirectional, blah, blah, blah. But basically what it means is that Google specifically is picking up context, which is huge for SEO, and that's where it's going. It's not just the keywords, but if I say, where can I find a bike trail in, well, Google's gonna go take that word bike or bicycle, go forward and backwards in what you just read to find things like, where can I? Okay, that's context. Bike trail, that's context. and then give you actual results that may have no advertising, because it understands, okay, this person is looking for this specific thing. They don't want to buy something. So all of these things that I'm saying just in the last 5 years are dramatically changing how search engine optimization for the end user, works, but also what companies need to pay attention to as to how they can take advantage of that and not just see it as a detriment. Because every time Google makes an update, companies who were just totally into the last update and they got everything just right, they can be hit really hard when something changes, because now they're basically playing by yesterday's rules in today's world. So that kind of makes sense. For example, here's a basic one. 10 years ago, like I'm on a desktop right now for this conversation, that's where the majority of us searched, right here. Well, now the majority of us search here. So these experiences are very different. And, and if you search one thing on a desktop and search that exact same thing in your mobile device, you're going to get completely different results, because people act differently on here than they do on a computer. So all of this goes into search engine optimization, and it's about being discovered and getting the attention you want.
And just to piggyback on that, I should say that you really know what you're talking about, because you're in talks with Google. I mean, you go up to, I know yearly you're going up to Northern California, San Jose, Silicon Valley up there, talking to our Google reps and the, marketing people over there. So this is not like, just theory. This is from actual practice and talking to Google themselves and seeing what do they want and where are they going. So that's the one thing I just want to say. And I think the one thing about SEO that it's really tough for the small people is it's a very technical, there are different parts to it. Some of the parts are very technical. So like when people come to me and they say, hey, how can I improve my SEO? I don't have the money to go to an ad agency. What can I just do, myself from my, little cubicle that I'm starting a startup or about a 3-man operation? I always say, I think what you've said earlier, that content is king. So if you can at least start putting some good content in your website, that's like, I think the place to start. But what do you think about that?
Man, that is always, it's so hard, because here's the thing. SEO is not a quick fix. It's not a short-term thing. And that's one thing that can turn people off, is it's like, I need my business to grow tomorrow. We used to have this business where we know, hey, if you don't make anything if you don't lose money in the first 12 months, this is like early 2000s or before thinking, you're good. And now it's like, if you're not making money next month, you're failing, which people need to calm down a little bit. But so when it comes to SEO, first they need to realize it's going to be the base that you're building everything on, and building that base takes time. Now, there's a few things. One, you want to, yes, content is very important, but I don't want to offend anybody or anything, but that whole content is king thing, I actually think context is king. So I used to say content is king, context is religion. So because if you, for example, here's a good one. The simple thing we used to do a long time ago is, okay, you're at company X, you sell bicycles, or you sell, you're a lawyer. You're a lawyer. Well, let's look at how many words, the word count on different lawyers' sites, the different categories on different lawyers' sites. And this is the quick and dirty old school way to, like, black hat way to do it. And then we're going to duplicate that. We're not going to take their content, but we're going to write just as many words. We're going to put just as many keywords in there, and we're going to make it just as many images. And you're kind of trying to replicate their success, and then you'll start seeing your results move. Doesn't really work that way anymore, because you can have a page that has a single page, let's say, that has 1,500 words on it. But you have another page that has 500 words on it. What they've said is more condensed, it's more valuable, it makes more sense. It's accompanied by maybe videos, and it's accompanied by images, and it's relative, if this 1,500 word page maybe keeps someone there 2 minutes because they get sick of reading and they bounce. But this small page, because it has a video there and which takes a third of the time to read, they're staying there 2.5 minutes. Well, this is more valuable in the eyes of Google, so it's going to show up more often than this big, robust thing. So to answer the question, I know I'm going on here. The first thing I would do is know your competition. Know your good competition. So if you have someone who's doing anything in the area that you want to be like, first thing I would do is I would check out those 3 to 5 big competitors with an eye of respect, not an eye of ire or an eye of envy. Like, damn it, we can do better than them, but go, hey, these guys, they do what we want to do, but what really makes them tick? And what you'll probably find, this is as deep as I'll go, is they definitely have a very specific message, they have a very specific tone, they have very specific differentiators that make them stand out. Even if all of their features are the same, they definitely have an angle that's their own that makes people go to them, which you cannot copy. You can try, but you can't do it. It's like someone trying to, I don't like this example because it's so easy, but Apple, you can't copy the brand and the affinity people feel with Apple. It's taken a long time to build. You can't copy it. Now, what kind of phone do y'all have?
Rocking an iPhone.
iPhone? An iPhone. Who knows? Take a guess what kind of phone I have. What brand?
A Samsung.
HTC.
OnePlus.
Oh, the Nord just came out. Did you hear about this Nord?
I heard about the Nord, and I don't think it's coming to the US yet, but I really want it. So here's the thing. OnePlus I kind of found in the earlier days under the radar. They have a very, they have good brand affinity. People who have used their products before like to stick with their products because they're simple, they're to the point, and they've definitely carved out a niche for themselves. It didn't happen overnight, and if they tried to take on Apple, no way. So that's a good example of a company who knew that early on, but that's also one, if you go look at the visuals on their website, in my opinion, it surpasses Apple. That's a tall order to say, but if you look at the experience of what they've done, it's crazy. It's absolutely amazing, and it's probably one of the best web experiences I've ever had. But they chipped away at that over time, and they've found their niche over time. So that's what's helped them, build up. And now and again, there's those other parts of it. They're showing up in articles. They're on reviews. There's all these things people are talking about them. So anyways, I don't know if I answered the question. I don't remember what the question was anymore. But the big thing is, if you're going to start early in SEO, just know it's not a plug-and-play situation. Know who you are as a brand. Know what you care about. Know what your mission is, because that's some of the messaging that's going to go in every piece of content you have. From there, make sure you know your competition. And if you're not a writer, if you're not a content creator of some type, a writer, a video person, a social media person, if you don't have those skills, either A, build them, try it, or B, get someone who is. Because it's going to be a lot easier to find a partner who understands that and can help build that content and let you run the business than you, it'd be like if I was trying to write code. It's going to be much less of a headache for me to find someone who's good at writing code and just pay them to do it than I'll spend 10 times as much work, time trying to do something I don't understand how to do than just trust someone who knows what they're doing. So anyways, I hope that answers the question a little bit.
Can you tell us a little bit about, some experience and projects you worked on, some big companies you've dealt with? Because you're telling us a lot about SEO. You mentioned a little about PPC, but I'd love to hear how that, how you've actually done that. If you give me examples of, companies, I don't know if you can, with whatever deals you make with the company. But if you could you share with us some like personal experience?
This is an early one, and this was one that this was very basic before I even really knew. I was still learning about what SEO was. This is pre-national positions, and this worked at the time. Since then, it's kind of tanked, but I will explain why. So I was working with, I'm not going to give their name, but I was working with a mid-size internet security company based here in Los Angeles. And when I came in, I was like, all right, what are the first things we want to do? And they were like, oh, we want to make, update our website a little bit. And I went and looked at their website. I was much younger, so I hadn't done a lot of this research prior. And there was almost nothing. There was nothing about who the company was. There was nothing about the CEO. This is a security company. You want to be able to trust this company. There was nothing that built any kind of trust. There were no articles on the site. There was no blog content on the site. So being in my early days, I went, all right, I'm just going to go straight from the written content side. So I ended up having to sit down with the CEO and go, all right, you're not showing up for any kind of search anywhere because you have these massive Silicon Valley companies that are just swallowing you. I want to start a blog for your company. I want to start, I want to actually talk about you. And I actually had to box with them quite a bit because being a security company, he didn't want to let any information out, zero, which I kind of get. But at the same time, I'm like, all your competitors are at least saying, this is our CEO. They have 30 years in the industry. They, those things you need to build trust with. So I started building site content and I started writing content on things like what was known at that time as Agent Tesla, nano rats, basically different kinds of different kinds of intrusion, different kinds of what's called the incident response kill chain. Incident response is if there is a network that's been hacked, you're trying to find the incident and respond to it. So you're actually going through a whole process. So I was writing all of this content about think and in a couple of months, the CEO came to me and he said, hey, like I searched for, I can't remember what it was at the time. I think he searched for nanocore rat to find some information and our article popped up. He was like, oh, that was cool. I said, and I went into incognito mode, which if you don't know what incognito mode is, that is a way in your browser that you can basically open a fresh, clean browser. It's not going to have any of your history, so it's not going to be influenced by what you searched. And he started searching for some of these things like Agent Tesla. And the stuff we were writing about, we were starting to show up. So that was, it doesn't sound like much, but for a little, security company in LA trying to compete with, the big boys, it kind of got us on that track. Did a lot of that over the next year. And I was there about 18 months. That was right before I came to national positions. And I won't go into why I kind of left because I was like, it was very mind-numbing being there and being the only marketing person. And I found these great opportunities to go talk at these conferences, and then every idea was getting shot down. And I was like, I enjoy marketing more than security. So that's why I went to national positions. But that was my kind of first taste into realizing, oh, okay, like content does have power. The subjects do have power. The where you source your data from has power, and all of those pieces do. So that was probably my first soiree into doing that. Right now at NP, at national positions, like Darren said, I do our internal marketing. So I don't do client-facing things. So I can't talk about our clients on their results because I haven't had the direct impact on them.
Yeah, and then just to follow up on that, maybe on the paid side as well, if you could talk about some, I don't know, how much paid does national positions end up doing for themselves, and how do you feel about that?
Here's the thing, it depends on the time of year. Like right now, we're actually working on a new set of Facebook campaigns. I'm very bullish on social media because the ability to target on social is, if you haven't gone to Facebook Audience Insights, just Google it. And it's a little overwhelming, but on things like Google Ads, it's not old school. I mean, you're still targeting by geographies and devices and time of day and day parting, and which basically means maybe you get better quality clicks between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., rather than having it on 24 hours a day. But you're kind of still targeting in that how people are searching. And on Facebook, it's actually kind of proactively targeting by, there's been a lot of misinformation, I think, about this when Zuckerberg was on Congress and all of that. They didn't know what they were talking about. Darren and I have talked about this a little bit, but, they're like, can you target me specifically? Like they're being very much, and really it doesn't work like that. Facebook takes the information that you give it, like, hey, I like this kind of news source, and I like these authors and these writers and these movies, and just kind of the regular things that we share, on Facebook. And then you kind of, when you're targeting on Facebook, you target by those kinds of parameters. I'm looking for people who are maybe in this age group who like cooking and watch Gordon Ramsay and like the British Bake Off, and it'll find people like that, who kind of look like that. So anyways, let me get back to the question. So I'm focusing on Facebook because we can actually find business owners or small business owners or large businesses, and that's kind of who we're focusing on right now. As far as, this goes back to a very early question, like what works best for every kind of company. If you just type digital marketing, the ads are endless on Google Ads. It's just any kind of ad. So we kind of go on and off with our PPC marketing, because I want to push more Facebook marketing in PPC. We are going to do another PPC campaign because we're releasing a new thing for our paid media, specifically for e-commerce, which is we're going to start offering product feeds, data feeds, shopping feeds. So this is if you're a business who sells sneakers or you sell women's clothing and you have many, many different products, well, Amazon, Google Shopping, eBay, other e-commerce sites, they all have their own standards of how you have to put that information into the platform so it shows up correctly for the searches. So we're going to start handling the data feeds behind that. So that is something we may do a pay-per-click campaign specifically on people looking for e-commerce shopping solutions. So that may be a place. But if you just, there's so much competition in digital marketing right now, simply because the barriers to entry are so nil. Someone could take a 20-hour Facebook course on Udemy and get a big head and decide, hey, I'm a Facebook marketing expert, and they can go on there, make an ad and go, So there are a lot of very small players and big players in digital marketing. So we're very careful with how much we spend and we target when it comes to things like Google Ads, because we want to be more granular and more specific. We don't just want to be general digital marketing, but we want to be social media marketing experts, e-commerce marketing experts. And those are the kind of things that, that any kind of company, let's go back to the bike analogy. If someone thinks bikes and they just put on an ad for bikes, well, there's different kinds of bikes. There's children's bikes, there's mountain bikes, there's high performance bikes, there's carbon fiber, there's all different areas. So it's really getting into the right niche so you don't blow your cash on just getting a bunch of clicks because people want an ebook rather than they really need help. So long-winded answer to say we do, all different kinds on that paid side, but right now Facebook is kind of Facebook and Instagram is going to be the focus for the next quarter.
I'm actually an e-commerce guy. I started my own business. I'm in the middle of building my my own website, and you're mentioning an interesting point where you have something like Amazon or even eBay, and they within their own website they have all these niches, and they have such a wide variety of products and different individual storefronts within their own business. So how is me, a guy who's just building his own website, going to compete in terms of marketing, in terms of search terms with Amazon or eBay?
It's two things. I'll let you know right now that I'm not an Amazon expert by any means. But what I will say is this, and I'm going to quote one of my favorites, Gary Vee, because I watch him quite a bit. have patience. It's not going to happen overnight, but get started, because it's really overwhelming, I think. Because it is like, I'm not sure what you do with e-com or what your product line is or what that is, but do you have your own storefront yet on Amazon?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Have you completed every single thing on there? Every image,
No, that takes time.
Exactly, it takes time. So I think the thing with something like that is the immediate concern is, how do I compete? Don't worry about that. You're getting started. How do you get started? And take it one thing at a time. It's like, I want to get my Amazon, what is that called? When, the drop shipping, their distribution, like I want to get that set up and I want to get this. But this other company, don't worry about what other companies are doing. You may take the same approach, like if there are others in e-commerce doing what you're doing, what are they doing on Amazon? Check that out first. Because part of it, I used to be very, very, very against that kind of competitive research because I just saw it as stealing. I'm just going to take what they did and put it on mine. But it's not about that. It's more about like, hey, they may have things laid out in a certain way. They probably have done it that way for a reason because it's working. So maybe I'll take that as an inspiration. Not stealing, it's an inspiration. But maybe I can put a video here instead of an image there. How are they saying this? Well, I don't really agree with that. Fine. I'm going to say that differently the way I say it here. But you do that little bit of that competitive research first to know if they're successful companies is because people like them for a reason. So, check those out with, again, the eye of respect, not the eye of envy. And then from there, start with just that storefront. Just take it day by day and get that done first. Get one piece done first. Can we curse on this show?
Preferably not.
Okay, then I'll sterilize this. There's a great quote. There's a show called Parks and Recreation. There's a character named Ron Swanson, and he, if you haven't seen it, watch the show because I think it's hilarious. But he basically says, don't do anything halfway. Or he says, don't do 10 things halfway. Do one thing all the way. That makes sense? Yeah. So rather than getting too concerned with there's all these pieces, how do I get ahead? Well, if you don't have that foundation built, you're not going anywhere. So just be patient. First, get that storefront done, and then make sure you do your research. I'm not going to dive into the technical because I don't know the technical. But one thing at a time. Don't try to hawk all your product when you may have something like, oh, I didn't put on when the delivery date was because it's not available yet. Like there's things like that. If you work too fast, you're going to get into trouble, and that can just get you booted off Amazon. So just cross your T's and dot your I's.
So we talked about SEO, organic search. We talked about paid search. Now we get to my favorite, marketing automation.
Marketing automation, yeah.
This
so
is like a
shameless
plug for myself.
plugs. Yeah. Wow.
So like, where do you see, what do you do? I could ask myself this, but I'll ask you, what do you do in national positions in terms of that? And then like, where do you see, does that play in for the average company? Like, where do you see, where the trends there? What do you think about that whole space?
I think what he's really asking is, in 12 months, does he still have a job?
Yes, absolutely. Well, because here's the thing. I've kind of boxed with this a little bit with different people outside of national positions, and Darren and I have talked about this too. A lot of people will use, I'm going to separate these two things. They will just kind of put together marketing automation and email marketing as the same thing. They kind of use that interchangeably. When really, here's the thing. At its most basic, email marketing, you may want to send someone a welcome aboard email. You may want to send them a promotional email. You may want to send them a nurturing email, which is, hey, I saw you were looking at this product. Or maybe someone abandoned their cart at checkout. Hey, you have an abandoned cart containing these products. Do you need help? You have those are just these are the tools. These are just the emails. Well, the automation part comes into, well, what's going to make this email abandonment email fire out at the right time to the right person? Well, that's automation. Well, what's going to make, someone who visited the site 3 weeks ago, what's going to send them a reminder email to come out and complete their whatever it is? Well, that's automation. What's going to follow up with that person who fills out the form on your site and make them feel welcome? Hey, thanks for getting a hold of us. We'll be in touch really soon. What's going to confirm that? And what's going to let your team know that someone just filled out a form over here? So this is where the automation section really comes into the email part. The automation is taking those redundant things that we used to have to do, taking a voicemail, taking a message, calling that to the right person, to the right salesperson, is letting them know, following up with the client. And it's taking all of those very tedious things that take time, collectively takes a lot of time, and trying to automate pieces of that process. So you're not, this isn't to get rid of anybody. This is to free flow the information the way it's supposed to go. And having someone who can manage that process, like what triggers that email? What's going to let our internal, if you have a CRM attached to your marketing automation, which we do, what's going to put the notes in the client profile? What's going to alert the sales team member? All of those things. That's the heavy lifting that marketing automation can help your company work faster and close more deals at a more rapid pace. Because if someone has to manually do all of these things, your competitors are just gonna, anyone who has anything basic in place just for emails is going to be able to surpass you, unless you have a very old school client base who doesn't rely on email. So there's also areas like live chat, or what we call conversational marketing, where if you've ever jumped onto a website you've been on before and it pops up and says, "Hey Matt, welcome back." And you're like, what? That's weird. Well, that's automation. That's some sort of, business intelligence or artificial intelligence or just machine learning. It recognizes the IP, of your computer and welcomes you back. Those are little things that can make a big difference. It can make you feel more welcome, and you can make you trust. Well, depending on how you approach it, like if it said, "Hey Matt, how's the dog?" I might be a little weirded out and bail. But if it just says, "Hey Matt, hope you're having a great Saturday," like those little contextual things that are driven by automation can help build trust faster. They can help the client feel more comfortable and build a little more affinity with the brand. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but that's kind of the separation between the tools, I guess you'd say, the emails and stuff, and the actual automation is the strategy that makes everything work. And it's having someone who can see the bigger picture to make those pieces of automation talk to each other. That's like someone on my end, I may say, okay, I want this and this and this and this to happen. I could be the big dog and just say, this is what I want to happen. I want emails and I want chat and I want notifications, but I have to turn to someone like Darren and clearly express what I'm wanting and say, I need you to help me make this work. Because I don't have, because I don't have the time to go in the system and map everything out. And you will, like if you have like a live chat or any kind of email drip, and you want it very programmatic and granular, it may start with what looks like a single email, fire out welcome email. If they do this, it's like a choose your own adventure from back when you were a kid. Like if they pick A, you go to this page. If you pick B, you go to this page. And it becomes this whole tree of information that you have to build content around to make the marketing automation fluid and personal for your customers.
And just to take this all back, like I think you said a really profound thing at the beginning, which was figure out what your competence is, what can you do, start, like, because people are going to listen to this and they're going to say, that sounds really complicated. And we're not going to sugarcoat and say it's the easiest thing to do in the world. Any of these things, setting up an SEO campaign, setting up a PPC campaign, setting up a marketing automation campaign, figure out what you can do. Figure out, like, if you can write emails, you're ahead of a lot of people. I mean, a
Yes.
lot of people can't write a word to save their life. If you can make videos, you're ahead of a lot of people. If you can edit like an audio file even, you're ahead of a lot of people. Figure out what you can do. Figure out what your budget is, figure out what your time is, and just start there. And then like once you're doing something, you can figure out, I think, like you're saying, to plug into all these different strategies, like where do I go from here? You know, I've got my YouTube video because I know how to make videos, or I've got my blog article.
You know, and with that, because this is something, it kind of was a slap in the face for me about a year ago, because it was so obvious, and I just, what took me so long is you consider, here's the thing. If you're good, like Darren said, if you're good at a specific area, squeeze every drop of juice out of that. Now, what I mean is this. If you're good at video, okay, cool. If you, like, for example, this podcast, okay, let's take this podcast. All right, we're going to take this podcast, and it's just a podcast, and we hope it gets traction, right? No. You take this podcast, you transcribe this podcast. Now you have everything in written form. Cool. Well, maybe that we hit a subject on SEO. We hit a subject on PPC. We hit a subject on 5 different areas. Cool. That's 5 different blog posts you have now. All you have to do, drop some images, put that in a blog post. You have, if you're doing 1 blog a week, that's 5 new pieces of content. Done. Cool. Now you have 6 pieces of content. Well, maybe you take little snippets from each of those and you start putting it in your social on LinkedIn. Maybe that gives you 10 LinkedIn posts. Cool, now you got 10 LinkedIn posts, you got 6 blog posts, you got 1 podcast. Now you're amplifying that content, you're multiplying it, but you're not doing extra work. And this is something that it's, because is everyone gonna listen? No. Is everyone gonna read? No. Is everyone gonna be on social? No. So you're trying to repurpose content in a way that just makes it, for one, easier for you. It's better to spend an hour on this podcast and spend another hour and a half getting all the different versions of this piece of content together that you can drip out over the next 3 weeks than it is just to do one thing and hope that one thing works.
Right.
Does that make sense? So
yeah, I think the king of that is Joe Rogan. I think we've talked about this once. He's got his
Joe
podcast.
Rogan, Gary Vee obviously is, he's the king of this. I mean,
Who's Gary B? I've never heard of
Gary
him.
Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk, here's the thing. I'll keep it short on Gary Vaynerchuk.
Joseph, you're in for it. Just hold on to your seat.
Well, here's the thing. When I first saw Gary Vaynerchuk, he hosted this thing called the Gary Vee Show, and it was on YouTube where he'd take questions, and I had no idea who the guy was. And I listened to him for about 3 minutes, and I bounced. I was like, this guy is such a brash, piece of that. He's so, he just was speaking in a way that was, at the time, to me, because he's very no BS, and someone will call in and be like, I'm trying to figure out this, and he goes, well, you're wrong. You're doing it wrong. Sorry, that's the truth. And I was like, man, this guy's so mean. And then about a year later, I saw another clip, and I was loving what was being said, and I realized, oh my God, it's the same guy. And then I started going back and listening. He's very, just search Gary Vee or search Gary Vaynerchuk. He was very famous for, he's built businesses over his whole life. And the first book, he has 3 books, I think, 3 or 4 books, was Jab, 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 Right Hook, which was his concept of give value, then ask. He gives all of his stuff away for free. He says that he gives all of his YouTube content, all his tips, all his tricks, he gives it away for free. But he's built this incredible, crazy media empire in New York, and his goal is to buy the New York Jets. But he, when it comes to social,
I don't know much about sports, but that doesn't sound like a good pick.
I have no idea. If you Google,
the Jets haven't won in a long time.
if your listeners Google Gary Vaynerchuk, I think it's 64 pieces of content. I think if you Google that, there's a whole slideshare deck out there where he breaks down this idea of taking one piece of content and then making over 60 pieces of content with that one piece of content. And it's crazy smart, and I encourage everyone to do it. because I think you will find content isn't as scary when you think about repurposing it rather than trying to start from scratch every single time.
Do you have any other people like you draw a lot of inspiration from that listeners should, check out? Because then Gary Vee's obviously awesome.
Well, yeah,
Joseph, you gotta check him out.
Gary Vee, I think is, I mean, I'm not on board with everything, he says, but he's good at when it comes to the tactical. Like, these are ways to tactically do this and do that and strategy. I like Simon Sinek. If you haven't, his speech, I think it was 10 years ago now, I think is what really inspired me to move from graphic design into marketing. Because I was doing graphic design, I was doing business. I wasn't sure in my undergrad what area of business I wanted to go into, because this was going back a day. This is after the crash of 2008, and when people were trying to flip houses, and that was the big thing. So I was kind of watching that. And his first book was called Start With Why, which I still have. I bought 2 copies because I've lost them over the years. But he talks about, if you search Simon Sinek Golden Circle, I think it's what it's called, Golden Circle, it completely changed my perspective on what marketing was, because I didn't
Doesn't
like
seem so
marketing.
SEO friendly.
What's that?
The entire sentence doesn't seem so SEO friendly.
Well, if you just type Simon Sinek, it'll probably be the first thing that pops up, because it went viral before viral was a thing. But his whole concept is most people, if you have 3 big circle, mid circle, little circle, most companies start from the outside in. I make great products that do X, Y, and Z. They have a great price, yada, 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 yada. Do you want to buy it? And that's how most people think. Features, 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 da, 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 da. Well, his concept is people buy why. They don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. They don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So his example at the time, many years ago, was from Apple. He's like starting in the middle, which is the why. There's something along the lines of, we connect people worldwide and bring people together. I think it was like, I remember the next rang out, but it was something along the lines of, we have the most secure systems and yada, yada, yada. We also happen to make beautiful products. Do you want to buy one? So it's starting from the why you do what you do. And I think this, even if you're not in business, reading this book, Start With Why, really, I audit myself all the time. When I'm writing, I've talked to Darren about this, I'm writing something, and I'll go, why does this matter? Like, what is the point? What am I trying to say? And I'll be able to cut a bunch of fluff, because I realize I'm just talking, but I'm not saying anything, which is also very important. Make sure you're saying something, not just talking. So Start With Why, and his other book, which was Leaders Eat Last, which is also a great book. And man, those are the main one I'm reading right now is Simon Sinek, quite honestly. I mean, I think what it is I don't read or listen to podcasts on marketing all the time. I think because I'm at the office well, I won't be at the office much longer, but I'm online, working this stuff at least 9 hours a day. So I think because I'm answering questions we get from Forbes about what are your thoughts on agile marketing? So I'm constantly researching and doing this stuff all day long. So I'm kind of always in it and I'm always on it. So I think that's why I probably won't, I can say, was it Seth Golden? I think that's the gentleman's name. He has a lot of nice little tidbits out there. There was another book. I put all my books away. Usually I can just look at my stack of books and be able to check, but they're all boxed up right now. So that'd be the place I would start. Gary Vee's, his book, Crushing It or Crush It. He has 2. One is Crush It, one is Crushing It. They're both pretty cool. You can read bite size. You don't have to, you can open anywhere and get a piece of knowledge, which is kind of cool. But if you want to really sink your teeth into something, that's why I like marketing psychology, because that can apply to any area, not just, put it this way, I don't read any books on digital marketing. You know why? Because by the time you read the book on a tactical solution of digital marketing, it's already dated. You're better to listen to podcasts, see what's going on marketingweek.com or something like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, one other resource just for like totally more technical end of the spectrum is Neil Patel. I think really kills it. And he has like a lot of very actionable.
That's an unfortunate, like I gotta give it to the guy, but it's a, you know, that's one where I do look at with a little bit of envy. Like, I'm like, I don't, it's so in your face, but it's so effective. But yes, you know, Neil Patel, one thing I will say on his stuff, he does an interesting thing on his blogs on different subjects. He continuously adds to them. That's one of the first things I noticed when, yeah, if you search SEO, digital marketing, his name always pops up, Neil Patel. And I was going, how does he write these insanely long, like 10,000 word, crazy long, you know, but they're still very legible and readable. And that's because I think he's constantly updating them, and he's constantly adding, you know, new stuff to the same, you know, subject, which is a great way to make, for SEO, to have Google keep re-pinging your content, because if you're constantly updating your content, the web crawlers are going to read it and know that you're updating your content. So yeah, keep going on Neil Patel. Sorry, I didn't mean to take that.
One of the last things I want to talk about, which we didn't touch on, is you. I mean, National Positions is contributing to Forbes all the time. Forbes has like an agency, sort of, what's it, like a round table would be a good way to say it?
It's called the Forbes Agency Council.
Okay, and you're basically in charge of that.
I work with what I always consider my right hand of the company, Jacqueline, who, you know, anything I write, I mean, I write a ton, but it does go through filters to make sure it's clean. But so, yeah, we get, so if you ever see those articles on Forbes that are like, we talked to 15 experts about this, we talked to XYZ about this, anything that's under National Positions heading has probably been written by me, which that's fun, because those are just short little bite-sized things, and I've submitted everything from landing pages to employee morale to, you know, anything and everything. So that helps keep me sharp, actually. And then we also write full form articles that I think we work with Jacqueline and someone else in the company to help write those. I've written a few of them on my own. In fact, the newest one that's coming out should be coming out this week. Maybe it's the next one. I think the one next month is going to be about a Google algorithm update, and that one I wrote. But yeah, so that's cool too, because it kind of keeps us in check, that if we're thinking on par with others in the industry, or if we have ideas others in the industry don't have. So I think that's kind of fun to do. Every week I'm doing Forbes for sure.
Yeah, and I think like last week, what do you have, three articles on Forbes?
We think we had 3 that were, because I may get every week an extra 3 to 5, like, what are your thoughts on this? This is for those top 12, top 15 lists. And it's kind of at their discretion. If they think you have something to offer that no one else offered, they will pick it and they'll put it in.
I just know that everything I've submitted has not been accepted.
Sorry.
So obviously you're doing a much better job than you and Jacqueline are doing a much better job than I am. But it's very cool to be like dealing with, you know, one of those industry leaders. And, you know, like, how do you feel about that partnership with Forbes?
You know, here's the thing. I think we've worked with several people over there, different editors, and as far as the process side, you know, it's fine. As far as working with them, I think, because I do so much of the writing for it, total transparency is that back when I was going to college, you know, I was in college, my lowest marks were always in writing. The actual grammatical, like all of that stuff. I always was, you know, acing English lit courses and you know, comprehension of SAT. I was always way high, but just the written expression I wasn't all that great at. So when I came on to National Positions, I knew that my writing quotient was going to be far higher than anything I'd ever done before. I was kind of nervous, about that because I had very little confidence in that. And then we brought on Forbes, and I went, all right. So I think, when I started writing for Forbes, and of course with Jacqueline's help to help clean these things up and round out those edges, and we started getting accepted, it kind of boosted my confidence a bit. Okay, all right. And then got better and better and better at that. And then they would always encourage you. They always encourage you when you submit to Forbes to read you can read what everyone submitted for every question. So I made it a goal for myself. For example, what's a way to increase your ROI, return on investment, for Google Ads? They wouldn't ask anything that basic, but something like that. Well, if you start going through the answers, it's going to say things like, make sure your targeting's correct. Make sure you put a cap on daily spend. It's going to have very basic things. So it became kind of a game for me to go, all right, I'm not going to read what everyone else wrote, but I know to the 80th percentile what they're going to say. So I want something better. So I'd be trying to really dig in and find some nugget that maybe I had to uncover as I was writing it, or just something I've been thinking that I never expressed. And then I might go back and check. And if it wasn't what everyone else was saying, good, go with it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's an interesting game for me for us to play, to see what's resonating with people. Because also, if there's a top 10 or top 12 list, if you see all the faces and the little collage, that's going to indicate what number you hit. So sometimes we're second or third, and I'm like, hey, all right. Sometimes we're seventh or eighth. It's like, all right, that's fine. So it's a constant game that I play with myself. And yes, it's to boost my ego a little bit, but I think it's been fun to kind of see this go from very few entries to more and more and more over the last couple of years. And that's not just me. That's, again, Jacqueline. She'll sometimes say, we have some more questions, and she'll write one, and it sounds like I wrote it. I'm like, dang, how are you doing this? And she's like, I've seen enough of what you write over the years to kind of know what you're going to say. And I'm like, darn it, I got to change it up again. But yeah, it's exciting to do that, because then be able to say that you've been published in Forbes, or the company, it's not me, but that your writing has been on Forbes.com over 200 times. It's a cool little oh, that's kind of nice. But I think, though, you start realizing when you start playing that game, wow, just getting published is not that hard. And maybe it's, you can't just stand on, there was an old song from the 80s. It was some hip hop song, and it was about a guy and a girl, and it was, what have you done for me lately? And that's how it feels when you're writing these things. It's like, oh, you were in Forbes last week. Good. What'd you do this week? How did you kill it this week? How did you do better this week? How did you do better? I don't care what you did yesterday. It's what you're doing next. So it's constantly chasing the carrot with Forbes, but it's fun. I like it.
Really cool. Well, I mean, there's so many nuggets of incredible info here. I'm going to have to read and listen to this a couple times, Matt, but I really appreciate having you on. And I think it was a real pleasure. I don't know. I have taught Joseph, but I learned a ton. That's for sure.
Me as well.
Oh, good. I know I chit chat a lot, but I appreciate it. I mean, it's always fun because, when I do these kinds of things, I get to learn things as well, and I think one thing that I hope your listeners get is that just because what they're doing last year isn't working now doesn't mean that they're bad, that they've done anything wrong. They just need to knock the dust off and try something a little bit new. And that's what marketing's about. It's just always testing things and trying things that are new and finding what works. So best of luck to everyone.
Thanks.
Excellent. Well,
and you'll know if this interview was successful if we get any listeners.
Oh, good luck with your SEO. I can't tell that.
Thanks so much.
Okay, have a good one.
All the best. Bye.
We're recording now. Let's do it. Thank you for listening. A little about us. I'm your co-host Darren May, and I'm a marketing professional. I'm the head of marketing automation at National Positions, one of the top digital marketing agencies in the world. I love anything to do with marketing and business.
And I'm your co-host, Joseph Miller. I'm an avid follower of the financial markets, and I have a degree in finance. I'm also the founder and CEO of international e-commerce conglomerate Without a P Enterprise. We are unapologetically Without a P since 2018. Make sure to like and subscribe and check out our website, pureconversation.com.